True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been, hand down. But why would you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses. Not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was a sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken. And observe how healthily, how calmly, I can tell you the whole story. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. In this 19th century story by Edgar Allan Poe, a man is overcome by his murderous desire to dispose of the elderly man living down the hall. And when he has, he finds himself burdened with the horrific knowledge of what he's done. And Poe illustrates that our sins will always find us out. That what's done in the dark will eventually come to the light in the Telltale Heart. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. But once conceived, oh, it haunted me day and night. Object, passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me, never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. You see, I think it was his eye. It had to be this, for he had the eye of a vulture. A pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, gradually, by degrees, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of his eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. How wisely I proceeded. With what caution, what foresight, what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. You fancy me mad. When every night, at midnight, I turned the latch of his door, gently, oh so gently. And when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in the dark lantern, and I thrust in my head. But oh, to see how cunningly I thrust it in! I did it slowly, slowly, so as not to disturb the old man's sleep. Would a madman have been so wise as this? I undid the lantern cautiously, cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. And I undid it so that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did every night, at midnight, for 7 long nights. But I found the eye always closed, and so you see, it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, merely his evil eye. So in the morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into his chambers, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring where he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very wise man, a very shrewd man indeed, to know that every night, at midnight, I looked in on him while he slept. Still, upon the 8th night, I was more cautious than usual in opening the door. Never before had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. Oh, I chuckled at the idea. And perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think I drew back, but no. The room was pitch black in the thick darkness, and I knew that he could not see me, nor the opening of the door. And so I continued to push my head in, steadily, steadily. And when I had my head in, I was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped on the tin fastening. The old man sprang up in his bed. Who's there? I kept quite still and said nothing. I swear to you, a whole hour passed and I did not move a muscle. And in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was sitting up, listening. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him. He had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise. His fears had been growing on him. He had tried to fancy them causeless, saying to himself, it was only the wind in the chimney. It was only a mouse scurrying across the floor. Yes, he had tried to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain because death caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, the presence of my head in the room. I waited patiently, for a long time, without hearing so I resolved to open a little, a very little, mind you, crevice in the lantern. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until a single dim ray, much like the thread of a spider, fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open. Wide open, I grew furious I gazed upon it. It was a hideous blue with a veil that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face, for I had directed the rays, as if by instinct, precisely upon the spot. I told you before that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses. Well, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, much as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It had increased my fury, much as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier to courage. But even then I refrained and kept still, holding the lantern motionless, steadily upon the eye. And the hellish tattoo of his heart increased. And in the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, such a sound, it excited me to uncontrollable terror. But even then I refrained. I practiced self-control, holding the lantern motionless. But the beating grew louder. Louder. His heart would burst. The old man's hour had come. I threw open the door and leapt into the room. I shrieked once, and once only. In a hurry, I dragged him to the floor. And I smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. I checked the pulse. He was dead. Stone dead. And so I knew that eye would trouble me no longer. If you still think me mad, you were no longer when I described to you the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I went up chastely. First I dismembered the corpse, cut off the head and the arms and the legs, and then I took up 3 planks and the floorboards and deposited it all between the scantlings. And then I replaced the floorboards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his own, could have detected that anything was wrong. When I made end, it was almost 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. But as the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the front door. I went down to answer with a light heart. For what did I to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard during the night, and they had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what did I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, he is absent, in the country. I bade the gentleman search all over the house. I led them to his very own chambers. And in the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs and desired them to rest from their fatigues, while I, in the wild audacity of my triumph, placed my seat above the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the old man. The officers were satisfied. They cheerily sat and chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself growing pale and I wished them gone. My head ached and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But the ringing became more distinct, and so I talked more freely, to rid myself of the feeling. But the sound increased and it gained definiteness. It wasn't long before I realized the sound was not coming from within my own ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, and yet I talked more fluently, and with a heightened voice, and yet the sound increased. It was a low, dull, quick sound, much as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. Oh. Yet still these men pleasantly chatted. Oh, I talked more quickly, more vehemently. Here I was, pacing to and fro with wide strides and violent gesticulations. Why would they not be gone? Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I swore. I took my chair and grated upon the boards, but the noise, it arose over all and steadily increased. Yet still these men pleasantly chatted. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no! They suspected! They heard! They knew! They were making a mockery of my horror! This I thought, and this I think. But anything was more tolerable than this derision. I thought I must scream or die. I could bear their smiles no longer. There it was. There it is. Again. Louder. Louder! Villains! Dissemble no more! Tear up the place! Here! Here!
beating of his hideous heart.